of the young airman's mouth before his hand flew across the security checkpoint booth, striking me hard enough to split my lip. As the sharp taste of copper filled my mouth, his buddies inside the guard shack howled with laughter. "Cry about it, sweetheart," he sneered, tossing my identification card into the dirt at my feet. I didn't cry. I didn't even yell. I calmly wiped the blood from my chin, picked up my card, and stepped directly past his stunned face toward the restricted high-security terminal reader. I pressed the card flat against the glass. The scanner flashed a blinding crimson, and every single emergency light on the panel turned blood red at once. An alarm pierced the air as the senior sergeant behind the glass stood up so fast his chair hit the wall. The smirks vanished. Because they didn't just assault a civilian, they just triggered a maximum security lockdown on a 4-star commander's authority. "You don't talk to me like that." The words had barely left the young airman's mouth before his hand flew across the security checkpoint booth, striking me hard enough to split my lip. As the sharp taste of copper filled my mouth, his buddies inside the guard shack howled with laughter. "Cry about it, sweetheart," he sneered, tossing my identification card into the dirt at my feet. "My name is Clara Vance. I am 34 years old, and until that exact moment, the gate guards at this base saw me as nothing more than an insignificant, invisible civilian clerk. It was a miserable, rainy Tuesday evening at Gate 3, the base's secondary, poorly lit peripheral entrance. I was exhausted, dressed in a faded jacket and plain jeans after completing a grueling 12-hour off-site shift. I pulled up to the barrier in my dented, 10-year-old sedan, wanting nothing more than to head home. But Airman Miller, a junior guard with an oversized ego and a chip on his shoulder, decided to turn a routine check into a power trip. He sneered at my car, mocked my civilian status, and demanded my ID with a level of unprovoked hostility that crossed the line into pure harassment. When I firmly told him to just do his job, stop the attitude, and scan my identification card, his fragile authority completely shattered. His eyes flared with rage, leading to the explosive backhand that left me bleeding in the gravel. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I calmly wiped the blood from my chin, picked my card out of the mud, and stepped directly past his stunned face toward the restricted high-security terminal reader. I pressed my card flat against the glass. The scanner flashed in blinding, ultra-rare crimson light, and every single emergency indicator on the security panel turned blood red at once. An alarm pierced the heavy night air, its deafening shriek echoing across the tarmac as the senior sergeant behind the armored glass stood up so fast his heavy office chair slammed violently into the concrete wall. The smirks on the junior guards' faces vanished instantly. Master Sergeant Hayes, a veteran with 20 years of service, came charging out of the guard shack with his sidearm drawn, his face twisted in absolute panic. "Step away from her. Drop your weapon and get on the ground right now, Miller," he screamed, his voice raw with terror. Before the young airman could even process what was happening, heavy automated anti-ram barriers slammed shut at both ends of the checkpoint with a bone-jarring crash. The perimeter was entirely frozen. Massive steel gates locked into place, completely trapping us within the secure sector. Miller stood frozen, his hand still half raised, looking back and forth between my bleeding lip and the flashing red terminal screen. His chest heaved as the realization began to sink into his chest. The automated sirens continued to blare across the entire base, signaling a Tier 1 security breach. They hadn't just minorly inconvenienced a civilian worker, and they hadn't just gotten into a standard gate dispute. They had just initiated a maximum security lockdown on a 4-star commander's direct authority. Miller's cocky posture completely vanished, replaced by a sudden, paralyzing fear as he stared at the screen, realizing his life was over. To the ordinary observer, I was just a tired woman in casual clothes driving a beat-up car, but the reality was vastly different. I am actually a senior cybersecurity inspector directly attached to the Department of Defense's Joint Command. The reason I was dressed in plain civilian clothes and driving a dented, 10-year-old sedan was entirely intentional. I was in the middle of conducting an unannounced, highly sensitive internal security and behavioral readiness audit. My specific mission was to test the peripheral entry points of the base, monitoring how guard personnel handled unexpected civilian interactions, stress, and routine protocol compliance. Airman Miller had just failed that test in the most catastrophic way possible. Back in the tense atmosphere of the checkpoint, Master Sergeant Hayes did not waste a single second. He stepped directly into Miller's personal space, his eyes blazing with fury, and demanded his service weapon immediately. Miller's hands shook violently as he unholstered his pistol and handed it over, his tough guy attitude completely evaporating. Desperate to salvage his position, Miller stammered, frantically trying to rewrite the narrative. "Sergeant, she was trespassing. She was acting aggressively, refusing to show her identification, and mouthing off. I felt threatened. I was just securing the gate." He lied smoothly, gesturing wildly toward me, hoping his friends would back him up. But what Miller completely forgot in his blind panic was the environment around him. I didn't need to argue, and I didn't need to defend myself. I simply pointed up toward the high-definition, armored security cameras mounted directly above the booth. They had captured every single angle of his unprovoked aggression, every word of his mockery, and the exact moment his hand had forcefully struck my face. The heavy, oppressive silence of the lockdown gate was shattered just 3 minutes later by the aggressive roar of engines. 2 midnight black tactical SUVs tore around the corner from the main command sector, their tires screeching violently as they swerved to a halt directly behind the automated barriers. The heavy doors flew open, and out stepped Colonel Briggs, the base installation commander, flanked by 4 heavily armed military police officers. Airman Miller and his accomplices instinctively snapped to attention, raising their hands in rigid salutes, their faces desperate for some semblance of military order to hide behind. But Colonel Briggs didn't look at them. He blew right past their extended hands, ignoring their presence entirely as if they were ghosts. He walked straight toward me, his boots clicking sharply against the wet asphalt. His eyes immediately locked onto the dark bruise forming on my jaw and the thin line of blood still dripping down my split lip. When he stopped in front of me, his posture was tense with an anger that made the surrounding air feel heavy. He didn't ask for my ID, and he didn't question my presence. Instead, he addressed me directly by my official title, his voice deep and booming in the quiet night. "Inspector Vance," he said, his eyes narrowing as he took in the damage. "What happened to your face, and who is responsible for breaching protocol at this station?" I didn't answer right away. I calmly wiped my lip one last time with the back of my hand. A young medic rushed forward from the second SUV, opening a first aid kit, but I raised my hand, gently waving him off for the moment. "The medical treatment can wait, Colonel," I said, my voice steady, echoing clearly off the guard shack walls. "Before anyone touches me, I want the digital security footage from Gate 3 pulled immediately. We're going to review it right here, right now." The group moved inside the cramped, neon-lit guard shack, the air thick with tension. Colonel Briggs stood at the main console, his jaw tightly clenched as Master Sergeant Hayes brought up the digital playback from Gate 3. The video monitor flickered to life, displaying the crystal-clear, high-definition recording of the entire encounter from 2 separate angles. There was absolutely nowhere left for them to hide. The footage played in complete, agonizing silence, showing my sit-in pulling up, Miller's aggressive posture, and his mouth moving as he delivered his condescending remarks. Then came the undeniable climax, Miller's arms swinging forward in an unprovoked, forceful backhand across my face, followed by the chilling sight of his fellow junior guards openly laughing and mocking my distress. Airman Miller's tough guy persona completely disintegrated in an instant. The color drained from his face until he looked physically ill. His knees visibly shook against his uniform trousers as he stammered, his voice cracking desperately. "Colonel, please, it was a mistake. She wasn't complying. I thought she was a threat. It all happened so fast." He spun around, looking at his buddies, wildly trying to shift the blame. "They saw it. They told me she was acting suspicious." But his accomplices didn't hesitate to save themselves. They immediately recoiled, throwing Miller under the bus to protect their own skin, loudly denying any involvement. Colonel Briggs silenced the entire room with a single, furious raise of his hand. He turned slowly, fixing his gaze directly on Miller. "You are a disgrace to this uniform," Briggs growled, his voice vibrating with absolute disgust. "You didn't neutralize a threat, Airman. You just assaulted a high-level government official during a federal audit. Do you have any idea what kind of prison sentence you are looking at?" Colonel Briggs did not waste another moment. He looked past Miller toward the heavily armed military police officers standing rigidly at the door. "Strip him of his security badge and his credentials immediately," Briggs commanded, his voice sharp and unyielding. "Take this man into custody." The MP officers stepped forward with practiced efficiency. Within seconds, Miller's wrists were bound in heavy steel handcuffs. His eyes were wide with a mix of terror and disbelief as they forcefully led him out of the guard shack and toward the back of a waiting transport vehicle. He was heading straight to the base brig, facing a severe military court-martial, an inevitable dishonorable discharge, and a lengthy sentence in a federal penitentiary. His accomplices didn't escape the fallout either. Colonel Briggs turned his icy stare toward the remaining junior guards who had laughed during the assault. "As for the rest of you, your failure to intervene is a direct violation of core values. You are immediately relieved of guard duty and reassigned to maximum administrative discipline pending a full review." Their military aspirations were effectively finished. Master Sergeant Hayes then stepped toward me, removing his cap and bowing his head slightly. "Inspector Vance, I offer my deepest, most sincere apologies on behalf of this entire security station. This behavior is entirely unacceptable." I looked at him, feeling the pain in my jaw, but knowing the objective had been achieved. "The audit results will reflect this incident, Sergeant," I replied calmly, "but I expect your immediate systemic changes to ensure it never happens again." It is truly disturbing how easily some people will misuse a minor position of authority the moment they think they are dealing with someone weak or defenseless. Airman Miller thought he could use his badge to abuse an invisible civilian, never imagining that the tables could turn so completely or so instantly. But in the end, justice found him exactly where he least expected it. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed someone completely misjudge a person's true status and instantly regret it? I love seeing how far these narrative stories travel across the world. And meanwhile, I am leaving 2 other incredible, high-stakes videos on the final screen right now that are totally right here on your screen to watch them now. And thank you